something out of nothing. Life's an everyday adventure. That's my philosophy. I always think of my mother as a grown-up, but she's always saying that when she grows up, she wants to be this or that. Well, today she decided she wanted to grow up to be a sculptor. I knew that a sculptor could make beautiful things out of clay because my mother had talked about it many times. Today she grabbed all of her sculpting tools and placed a huge glob of clay on the table. She looked at me with a smile and said, "Today, Sweet Pea, we are going to make something out of nothing." We each took a hunk of clay with our hands and started playing with it. It felt soft, cold, and sticky. We had a great time making silly shapes. As we chatted about what we wanted to make next, my toes started tingling in my moccasins like stars twinkling in the night sky. My mother thought she would create some bookends for my father's thinking room. She ran to get something and came back with a photo of a famous sculpture called the Thinker. She thought it would give her just the right inspiration for her bookends. As I watched her begin to work with the clay, I decided I wanted to make something for my father too. I started to mold my idea into the clay. I was going to make a statue of me for his office desk, except I could not get my hands to do what my brain was thinking. I kept trying to make the clay into what I saw in my head, but it just wasn't working. I asked my mother how she was able to do it so easily. She told me that it is a skill she has been working on for many years. I guess I have a lot of practicing to do. Noticing I was having a hard time, my mother decided to help me by teaching me something new. She turned on a machine that had a flat plate that spun in circles. She placed some clay on the plate and began showing me how to create a bowl. This is a potter's wheel. It spins as you work the clay with your fingers, which helps shape a perfect bowl, she said as the round shape magically began to appear out of the mound of clay. "Wow! May I try?" I asked with excitement. My mother set me up at the wheel, and I tried to make a bowl too. I couldn't believe it. It was so much easier for me than making a statue. I made a bowl so fast that I decided to make another one, then another one. I made 3 bowls by the time my mother finished her Thinker bookends. Well, they almost look like bowls. "Now we need a little extra help," my mother said as she packed up our clay creations. We hopped in the car and drove to a pottery studio. "This is where I take lessons, Sweet Pea. They said I could use their ovens any time," she said as we walked through the door with our clay in our hands. "Ovens?" I asked. Just then Diego, the owner, said hello. He smiled with approval as he put our pieces into a huge oven. Then he told me it wasn't just any old oven. It's called a kiln, and it gets really, really hot, much hotter than a regular kitchen oven. That's how the clay gets so hard and strong. Cool. Oh, more like hot diggity dog. Diego said it would take some time to bake the clay in the kiln, so my mother and I decided to walk through the park to our favorite cafe to get something to eat. As we were walking, I saw something I didn't remember ever seeing before. It was a sculpture of an old man reading a story to a duck? Yes, a duck. It was so pretty and a little funny. How could I not have noticed it before? We looked at all of the details for a few minutes. The man's face, his clothes, the book, and even the duck. Everything looked so real, except it wasn't. We continued walking, and only a couple of steps later my mother said, "Sweet Pea, look at this." It was another sculpture of a little girl sitting on a giant mushroom with some animal friends. Once again, I couldn't believe I had never noticed it before. This one looked very familiar, like a story I knew but couldn't remember. Not only did we look at this sculpture, we also decided to introduce ourselves to the girl and all of her friends. We hugged each of the characters and said hello to them. As we were circling the sculpture, I noticed a break in the wall of trees behind it. I was curious, so I peeked. Wow! I found a whole world of sculptures. It was amazing! My mother and I walked around the statues of bears and lions and smart-looking people in funny outfits until it was time to go back to the pottery studio. We didn't get a chance to eat, but my brain was so full with all of the cool art we had seen in the park. We told Diego all about it as he set us up with as many paint colors as we could imagine. My mother said she liked the natural color of the clay, so she put a clear glaze on her bookends to make them shiny and pretty. I painted my bowls with wild and wacky colors. Then I decided to add names to my colorful bowls. When we finished painting, Diego put the pieces back in the kiln to bake the paint on. He said it wouldn't take too long, so we went to get a hot chocolate from the shop next door. We never did get to eat, so as we sipped our hot cocoa on the bench, we decided we'd make a big pasta dinner when we got home. As soon as we walked through our front door, we whipped up our dinner in no time. I set the table with the new bowls I had made today. My father was so surprised and proud. As we ate, I told my father that the bowls were not the only things we made today. Then my mother handed him the beautiful bookends she had made. He was so happy he gave us each a big spaghetti kiss. Playing with clay and making beautiful art out of nothing is an amazing experience. Molly Moccasins, everyday adventurer.